Hey there, geographers, and welcome back to the Mr. Sin channel. Today we're going to be reviewing forced and voluntary migration. As always, if you find value in these topic review videos, consider subscribing and check out my other review resources down in the description of the video. When people decide to move, whether it is to another city, region, or even country, it is known as migration. Human migration is the permanent change of residence by an individual or group. Remember, if a person is leaving a country or political territory, it's known as emigration. And if a person is moving into a country or different political territory, it's known as immigration. For example, I live in the United States, and if I decide to leave the United States and move to Scotland, I would be emigrating from the United States and immigrating to Scotland. Make sure you don't mix these terms up. Just remember E for exit and I for in. Now, when migration happens, it's either forced or voluntary. Forced migration is when the migrant has no choice but to migrate. This could happen for a variety of different reasons, such as an individual migrating to save their life or their family's life. Human trafficking, forced child labor, child soldiers, and slavery would all be examples of forced migration. When an individual has been forced to emigrate from their country due to war, political factors, or environmental factors, they may seek asylum in another country and try to get refugee status. Societies that violate human rights, persecute citizens for their sexual orientation, religious beliefs, cultural differences, or political beliefs are more likely to have an increased number of refugees. And it's not just the violation of human rights that can increase the amount of refugees coming from an area. Natural disasters, droughts, famine, disease, or even civil war will also likely increase the number of refugees. Refugees are individuals who have been forced to leave their home country and have crossed an international boundary in order to escape war, persecution, or natural disaster. Oftentimes, refugees may seek asylum in another country. According to the United Nations Refugee Agency, an asylum seeker is an individual who is seeking international protection in countries with individualized procedure. An asylum seeker is someone whose claim has not yet been finally decided on by the country in which the claim is submitted. Essentially, an asylum seeker is someone who has left their home country and is seeking protection in another country. Now, sometimes people are forced to migrate due to political instability, persecution, or natural disasters, but do not cross an international boundary. In these situations, the migrant would be known as an internally displaced person, or IDP for short. An IDP is an individual who has been forced to flee their home in order to avoid the effects of armed conflict, situations of generalized violence, violation of human rights, or natural or human-made disaster, but has not crossed an internationally recognized state border. Okay, so that's forced migration, but what about voluntary migration? Unlike forced migration, voluntary migration happens because people are choosing to leave their current location on their own free will. Oftentimes, this is due to different economic, political, social, or environmental push and pull factors. If a migrant leaves their home country in search of residence in another country, it's known as transnational migration. Oftentimes, migrants who migrate to a different country will end up residing in areas with similar cultural values as their home country. It is also common for migrants to keep connections with their home country as well. Sometimes those connections can lead to chain migration. This type of migration often is part of a country's family reunification policy. This type of migration is a process in which legal immigrants who have become naturalized citizens sponsor a family member to immigrate to the country. For example, a person's son migrates to the United States of America and eventually becomes a naturalized citizen. The son could eventually petition for his father, spouse, or mother to migrate to the United States. In order for a person to sponsor a family member, they have to pay a filing fee, provide proof that they can support themselves and the migrant without government aid. And after all that, the migrant will still need to go through a vetting process, which includes background checks, medical examinations, and in-person interviews. Another type of voluntary migration that can sometimes involve crossing an international boundary is step migration. Here, migration happens in stages. Migrants make stops on their way to their final destination. We last talked about step migration in our Unit 2 Topic 8 video when we reviewed Ravenstein's laws of migration. Remember, with step migration, a migrant will stop at different places on the way to their final destination. For example, let's say I left Minnesota and drove to New York, where I eventually took a plane and left the United States to fly to Paris, where I stayed for a short period of time only to get on another plane and fly to Germany, which was my original destination. Notice my migration from the United States to Germany occurred in different stages. Now, sometimes migrants that are traveling in a series of steps may run into intervening obstacles and/or intervening opportunities. Remember, intervening obstacles are negative situations or events that hinder migration and end up preventing migrants from reaching their final destination. While on the other hand, intervening opportunities are positive situations conditions or events that hinder migration and end up preventing migrants from reaching their final destination. Now, sometimes migrants may temporarily migrate to a new country for work or for educational reasons. These migrants are known as guest workers. Oftentimes, these migrants may send money back to their home country, which is known as remittance. Guest workers can help fill gaps in a country's workforce. For example, for years I worked at a theme park at the Mall of America. Every year, the mall would recruit people from around the world to come to the United States and work during the mall's busy months. These workers were given temporary work visas and helped fill all the jobs that the theme park needed during the busy summer months. Okay, let's change gears and look at voluntary migration that often does not involve crossing an international boundary. First up, we have transhumance migration. This migration is connected to agriculture and the seasons. Here, movement is cyclical, which means migration occurs in regular intervals or patterns. In this case, migration revolves around the seasonal movement of livestock between two locations. Livestock is often led to the highland areas in the summer months and the lowland areas in the winter months. The seasons are what determine the migration. For example, we can look at the Balkans, where many pastoral farmers and people used to spend the summer months in the mountains and move to the lower plains in the winter. Today, oftentimes, migration is not based around the seasons, but is based around economics. Remember, economics is the #1 reason why people migrate. We can see this when looking at rural to urban migration, which often happens because people are seeking economic, social, and political opportunities that are often found in larger urban areas. Now, if a migrant leaves their home city but does not migrate outside of the region in which their home is located, the migration would be an example of intra-regional migration. But if the migrant leaves their current region and moves into a new region that is still in the original country, it is known as inter-regional migration. These terms are very similar and easy to mix up. Just remember, intra-regional migration is the movement of people within the same region. For example, moving from a city to the suburbs of the city. Inter-regional migration, on the other hand, involves migrants moving from a region in a country to another region in the same country. For example, if I decided to leave the Midwest of the United States and move down to the Southeast of the United States, notice that both of these different migrations do not involve people crossing an international border. The focus here is on the regions that exist within a country's boundary. All right, and there you have it. That is forced and voluntary migration. Now you know the drill. The time has come to practice what we've learned. If you do need to check your answers, remember you can check the comment section down below or the description of this video. And while you're in the description of this video, don't forget to check out my ultimate review packet. It's a great resource that can help you get an A in your class and a 5 on that national exam. As always, thank you so much, geographers, for watching. I'm Mr. Sin, and I'll see you next time online.